What if the most lopsided trade of the NHL season has already happened and no one is paying close enough attention? While the Toronto Maple Leafs are still trying to understand how everything went so wrong so fast, the Philadelphia Flyers may have made the most strategic and underrated move of the entire trade deadline. A quiet trade. Cold, calculated, but one that could have an impact for years to come. After a 6-1 blowout loss to the Florida Panthers in the fateful Game 7, the Canadian franchise spiraled. It wasn't just another elimination. It was a moral collapse. And amid the disappointment and the desperate search for quick answers, Toronto made a decision that now seems increasingly irreversible. They sent young Russian talent Nikita Grabenkin and a 2027 first-round draft pick to the Flyers in exchange for Scott Laughton. It was a decision born of urgency. And like many decisions made under pressure, it hasn't aged well. For those who follow the Leafs for years, the pattern is clear. Broken promises, crushed expectations, and impatient moves. This team, supposedly in its prime with Austin Matthews at the peak of his powers and Mitch Marner in his golden years, lives in a perpetual cycle of frustration. The pursuit of intensity, of identity, of that elusive grit so desired in the playoffs led management to target Laughton, a veteran known for his hustle and leadership, who had just closed a long chapter in Philadelphia. But what initially looked like a shrewd move quickly turned into a quiet nightmare. Scott Laughton finished the regular season with just 4 points in 20 games wearing a Leafs jersey. In the playoffs, where his experience was expected to be vital, despite still playing at a high level, score a single goal in 13 games. He contributed just 2 assists. That's right, 2. In a series that ended with Toronto getting steamrolled 6-1, the lack of offensive output was impossible to ignore, especially when, in the same matchup, Brad Marchand, acquired by the Panthers for only a second-round pick, scored 3 points in Game 7 alone, a veteran making an impact in the decisive game. Exactly what Toronto expected from Laughton. But this trade can't be analyzed by numbers alone. It exposes a difference in mindset between two franchises. While the Leafs desperately tried to patch holes with immediate reinforcements, the Flyers played the long game. They traded a veteran who had already given everything to the team for valuable assets. An up-and-coming young player and a first-round pick. Nikita Grabenkin, although still playing overseas, is considered a special talent. And the 2027 pick, in a draft projected to be deep, could be the missing piece to accelerate Philadelphia's rebuild. It's the kind of trade that goes unnoticed on the day it happens, but could change the direction of a franchise 5 years down the line. Scott Laughton is not an irrelevant player. He made history with the Flyers. 12 seasons with the franchise. He signed multiple contract extensions, wore the leadership badge, and in 2025, tied a record by scoring 4 goals in a single game against the Red Wings. He was beloved by the fans, a symbol of commitment, but he was no longer the future of the team. His move to Toronto, as symbolic as it may have been, was not what the Leafs needed, and the price paid for him now sounds like a cry of desperation. Behind the scenes, the word is that this trade was a reflection of a team refusing to accept that it might need to stop and start over. The core of Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares, known as the Core Four, is showing clear signs of wear. The window of opportunity, once wide open, is closing fast. With Marner potentially leaving soon and Tavares facing increasing scrutiny, the future is uncertain. And by giving up a first-round pick and a prospect, the Leafs didn't just mortgage part of that future. They may have squandered one of their last chances to change course with balance. The Flyers, on the other hand, seem to understand the moment. Out of the playoffs for years, they accepted the pain of a rebuild. And now, they're starting to reap the rewards. With Grabenkin in the 2027 pick, they can build a young, skilled, competitive core. And more importantly, there's no rush. They have time. And in the NHL, time is power. Now, imagine this scenario 3 years from now. Grabenkin standing out as one of the top wingers in the conference, while Toronto desperately tries to keep Matthews happy with a roster that keeps losing pieces. Imagine that first-round pick turning into a new star, while the Leafs live off emergency trades. That's the kind of consequence that makes this trade so impactful, even if most people haven't realized it yet. And now I want to hear from you. Was this the worst trade of the season? Or is there still time for Laughton to prove he was worth it? What would you have done if you were in the Leafs' shoes? Drop your opinion in the comments, because this conversation is just getting started. What if the trade for Scott Laughton already seemed like a mistake, and now it's just one more piece of a much bigger collapse? The Toronto Maple Leafs are not just dealing with a miscalculated transaction. They're on the verge of an institutional earthquake. The crushing defeat to the Florida Panthers in Game 7 didn't just seal another early playoff exit. It fully exposed the cracks that have been quietly growing beneath years of hopeful brilliance. The so-called core four of the Leafs didn't just collapse in performance. They're unraveling before our eyes, and there may be no turning back. It all started with a decision that already felt desperate, sending promising forward Nikita Grabenkin and a valuable 2027 first-round pick to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for a familiar face, Scott Laughton. The hope? Bringing experience, grit, and some much-needed secondary scoring. What the Leafs got instead was 4 points in 20 regular season games and complete silence in the playoffs. 0 goals in 13 games. Just 2 assists. Meanwhile, the Flyers, who didn't even make the playoffs, walked away smiling. They knew exactly what they were doing, capitalizing on the desperation of a team on the brink of collapse. But that move was just the tip of the iceberg, because as Toronto processed yet another failure, for crucial names were nearing the free agency clock. Mitch Marner and Tavares, 2 pillars of the team's core, could become unrestricted free agents as of July 1st. Matthew Knies, the franchise's rising star, is entering restricted free agency. And even Brendan Shanahan, the longtime architect of this roster, is without a contract. The clock is ticking. Despite still playing at a high level, decade represents a future this franchise feels not just uncertain, it feels unstable. Among all these names, Marner is without question the most symbolic. The hometown kid, the local hero, drafted 4th overall in 2015. A natural playmaker, charismatic, beloved, but also one of the most heavily scrutinized players in the NHL. His playoff performance, once again, was a letdown. Just 1 assist in the final 4 games of the series against the Panthers. Only 3 shots on goal, a plus-minus of -4. And perhaps most damning, a silence louder than any post-game interview. According to Sportsnet's Elliotte Friedman, there's a lot of interest in Marner on the open market. And that opens a new chapter. Because this isn't just about performance in Toronto anymore. It's about context, about burnout, about a locker room emotionally maxed out. Friedman was clear. It's hard to imagine Marner and the Leafs reaching a new deal unless one side gives in a lot. This is no longer a simple negotiation. It's an impending rupture. And the most curious part, Toronto has already explored moving him. Back in March, before the trade deadline, the Leafs reportedly asked Marner to waive his no-trade clause for a potential deal with the Carolina Hurricanes, a package that included none other than Mikko Rantanen. His answer? No, he wanted to stay. But now, after another elimination, after the boos and stands, after brutal headlines in the press, does he still want to? If Marner represents a past that's beginning to fall apart, then Matthew Knies represents the future Toronto is desperately trying to hold on to. At 22 years old, Knies stood out in the playoffs with 5 goals in 13 games. He recorded 58 points during the regular season. Clearly, the Leafs front office sees him as untouchable. They even chose to keep him over Rantanen in trade discussions. A bold bet, but now, this very player is heading into his own contract talks. As a restricted free agent, he'll be watched closely and targeted. And if the Leafs truly believe he's their future, they'll have to pay up to keep the bet alive. On the other side of the equation is Tavares, the captain, the man who came home in 2018 with a 7-year deal. a proven elite player who tallied 38 goals this season and 74 points overall. And yet, he too was shut out in the series against the Panthers. At 35, Tavares wants to stay. But according to Friedman, Toronto won't break its financial structure to re-sign him. And what's more, other teams, especially younger ones, see Tavares as a perfect locker room leader. The exit door isn't open, but someone's already touched the handle. And while all of this unfolds, Brendan Shanahan, the architect of the Leafs era, remains without a contract. His silence is deafening. And the power decision now shifts to new faces. Keith Pelly, the newly appointed MLSE CEO, and Craig Berube, the new head coach, who will already have influence over the franchise's direction. The Shanahan era may have ended without notice, without a farewell speech. And maybe that tells you everything you need to know about the team's current state. Toronto is at a breaking point. The core that once promised to break curses now seems part of them. The choice the Leafs must make isn't just about who to trade or retain. It's about who they want to be moving forward. A team clinging to past glory, or a franchise bold enough to burn the bridges and start anew. And you? Do you believe it's time to trade Mitch Marner? Or is he just a scapegoat for a much deeper problem within the franchise's core? And John Tavares. Does it still make sense to re-sign a captain who's aging and hasn't delivered when it counts? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear what you would do if you were in the Leafs front office. And if you're a Leafs fan, an NHL junkie, or just want to follow the drama behind this impending implosion, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because in the next video, we'll break down the teams most interested in Marner and what they're willing to give up to land him. And trust me, their franchise is ready to bet everything to pry him out of Toronto. The summer in Toronto is just beginning, and it might change the course of this century-old franchise forever.